Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we are coming back in the new year to provide you all with what I consider to be 5 top recommendations on builds and loadouts for you to construct and run in the Division 2 in 2024. If you haven't checked one of these videos out before, it is important for me to point out one big detail, that being, I don't make these lists with one singular goal in mind, right? I'm not claiming that these 5 builds all excel at solo speedrunning or that they're all top 5 on the DPS charts. Rather, I try and curate a list of builds that should allow you to have options for the vast majority of the Division 2's endgame content, meaning there's stuff in there to help you with solo PvE content, with XP farming, with group support, PvP. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into my thought process for this, and as always, these are just templates and ideas. Hopefully they can spark for you some inspiration on how to take these concepts and further develop them into something that better tailors to your playstyle. Only other main thing to point out, I showcase builds in these videos in a kind of overview style so as not to make the video way longer than it needs to be, but to compensate, I do have standalone videos out there for 4 out of the 5 builds I will be showing, so that if you do want further details or you want to hear more of my thoughts on anything shown off, you can do just that, and all of those links will be down in the description. With that, timestamps are below so you can browse through the various builds to your liking, and before we jump in, if you end up enjoying the video and you want to see more Division 2 content in 2024, then I would greatly appreciate you hitting the like on this video and subscribing if you haven't already. It all truly helps out, but let's go. And the build that I really want to begin with is one that I think really skyrocketed in popularity this past year, and for good reason. It is arguably the best DPS setup in the game, that of course being Striker. Now, this is an interesting one for this list and video, that being because there's not one singular loadout that I can recommend for it. In fact, there are a variety of different arguments on what is the best setup for it for what content. Do I run the chest piece for more stacks? Do I run the backpack for more damage? Do I run a multiplicative bonus damage item? What exotic do I slot in? Many considerations, right? So do keep in mind that there are a multitude of ways for you to construct this gear set to support your specific playstyle and what content you might want to apply it to. But let me show you 2 different variations of Striker that I use for 2 very different content purposes. The first version is what I use on any solo heroic PvE content or lower difficulty group PvE content, so things like challenging level countdown. It consists around utilizing Striker's great bonuses for damage and weapon handling, but not focusing so much on the stack micromanagement side of things, allowing you to reach your damage ceiling much faster and focus on your gameplay. So this is the breakdown. Your primary, frankly, can be any good AR, SMG, or even LMG that you want. I do think certain options like the Eagle Bearer, the St. Elmo's, the Ouroboros, or things like that will do the best and be most applicable to the widest amounts of content, but choose as you like. I like having an ACS-12 as a secondary for quick stack building. Then we're running Striker for our mask, gloves, holster, and knee pads, leaving both the chest and backpack slot open for other talents. And again, that really allows for you to take advantage of Striker's bonuses, but still leave room for other options that really help with the solo PvE experience. Those include a Fenris chest piece, again if you're using an SMG or an LMG you want to swap the brand to either Sokolov or Petrov, and the Obliterate talent allows you to build a secondary set of stacks alongside your Striker stacks, and like I said, it lets you reach a damage ceiling much faster and you don't have to monitor it nearly as much. Additionally, the Memento exotic backpack is known for its incredible solo utility, with high damage boosts and great sustain capability with the bonus armor and armor regen. You're going to want to roll crit on every piece, and I run 2 blue cores, the rest damage. The gunner specialization works great for this kind of a setup. I use it with the Banshee pulse that it unlocks for really good crowd control on the enemies. As I said, solo PvE heroic content, lower tier group content, this variation or something similar of Striker will shine. But let's say you want to take things up a notch. The Paradise Lost Incursion, legendary missions, heroic countdown. If you plan on tackling the Division 2's more prestige and group-based endgame content, then I would swap around things to look more like this. Using either the St. Elmo's or the Ouroboros as your primary is highly recommended. These grant incredible base and crit stats that just ensure a smooth experience. Specifically, using the lefty named ACS-12 as your secondary grants you an incredible team-wide damage buff with Sledgehammer. Then for the pieces, we've swapped out to use both the Striker's chest and backpack, meaning at maximum stacks we're reaching 200% weapon damage, and this works fantastic for the higher health pool single target damage encounters you're going to encounter more frequently in this content, right? Incursion bosses, heroic countdown enemies, etc. To compensate for those lost talents though, we are using the Coyote's exotic mask for great crit bonuses, and the Fox's prayer knee pads, although this could also be replaced by Contractor's gloves or a crit branded piece. And while you can swap this part if desired, I do like running Firewall to be able to get even higher damage using the Striker Shield. Additionally, I am running 3 Protection from Elite's mods. It helps with the survivability on these high difficulty missions, and the damage drop off isn't too noticeable. And because of that, anywhere from 0 to 1 armor cores is typically recommended. Something akin to this loadout will ensure that you can compete in the Division 2's toughest PvE challenges, so I definitely advise having one on hand. But let's say DPS and weapon builds aren't as much your jam, no worries, because our next loadout is a fantastic option in the realm of skills. Now, I do have a quick disclaimer quickly before we go over it. This is the one build that I do not have a separate dedicated video for. The reason being, I only recently began dabbling with skills once again, and after putting out a video with another great alternative, I got a lot of recommendations to try a loadout similar to the one I'm about to present, and yeah, I ended up liking it even better. I think it's much easier to adopt. That said, these types of builds are super easy to follow along with what stat rolls to put where, so don't worry, you're not going to be left feeling lost. This is the setup primarily utilizing the rigor gear set and some other popular skill choices to maximize that tech fantasy playstyle, and it's both effective and fun. For our primary weapon, highly recommend the Capacitor Exotic AR. It just synergizes perfectly with pretty much any skill damage build, but you can also slot in, and I have one of these as my secondary, a high end with the In Sync weapon talent. It basically does what the Capacitor does, just slightly less coolly, I feel. But yeah, the Capacitor Exotic, Test Subject named PDR, or the Harmony named MK47 are my top 3 recommendations for weapons. For the rigor gear set, we've got our 4 pieces across the mask, knee pads, chest piece, and backpack. And while there are definitely ways to set this up without using the chest or the back, I really do like how these talents amplify the playstyle and power of what rigor does, and it just makes the overall gameplay style feel much more fluid and effortless. But of course, experiment there as you like. Then we've got 1 piece of Wyvern on our gloves for that skill damage bonus, and the Waveform Exotic holster. That one is pretty self-explanatory. It gives you huge skill damage boosts that can be sure to cross your 2 skills, so it works great. The Assault Turret and the Striker Drone are the top 2 options for these types of full-on skill damage builds. I've got no arguments there. And then we're using the Technician spec because, yeah, nothing more effective for skill builds. Be sure to roll one of your core attributes away to either damage or armor, since Technician gives you the free skill tier. But beyond that, skill tiers and skill damage should be rolled everywhere else. If you do end up using the Rigor backpack, then skill haste doesn't matter at all, because when you destroy your skills, you'll get them back immediately. So substitute that stat on your pieces with whatever else you'd like. And because of that, I chose to run some Protection from Elite's mods, but you could swap that out easily for Armor on Kill, Crit, really whatever suits you. So yeah, if you're looking to get into the skill world, take on some solo, even group heroic content, this one is going to serve you very well. Next up, I wanted to throw something in here that easily rose to the charts among my most used builds of 2023, and that is both due to its power and specifically its effectiveness at farming XP, which comes in particularly handy whenever there is a new season, apparel event, or something similar that drops. Ever since this build became a thing, I have not used anything else for those purposes, so I figured it deserved a spot on this list, and that is a Determined Sniper build. What this does is combine the Hotshot gear set with the Wild Determined weapon talent, and together they one-shot their way through the vast majority of the Division 2's endgame content. To kick it off with a very specific primary weapon recommendation, the White Death named Carbine M44. It comes with higher than normal headshot damage, which maxing out headshot damage is the key to this build, and then you can roll Determined onto it, which is necessary for this all to work. For the gear, 4 pieces of the Hotshot gear set across the mask, gloves, holster, and knee pads, and this gives you fantastic marksman and headshot bonuses, along with stacking bonuses for persistent headshots, which is what Determined allows for. So all pretty self-explanatory there. For the chest piece and backpack, all that is really crucial here is to have the Headhunter and Vigilance talents. I've seen people use this across a variety of items, right? Providence pieces, Habsburg pieces, to Araldi, Walker, and Harris. I'm choosing to use the perfected version of both of those talents on the Chainkiller and Sacrifice items respectively, but that's really just out of convenience. However you get there, just be sure to have those 2 talents, again, Headhunter and Vigilance, on sniper and headshot related brands, and you'll be good to go. And then the Sharpshooter specialization, there's really no other viable pick here given the bonuses it provides. For the rolls on your gear, pretty straightforward, damage across the board, meaning 6 red cores and headshot damage everywhere it goes, including your mods. And with all of those elements, you'll be one-shotting in no time. It is important to point out that this same setup can be achieved on a non-scoped marksman rifle variation, as well as with high damage pistols like a D50 that has Determined rolled onto it. So don't feel locked into just using it as I am in this gameplay, you do have choices there. Next up, bit of a curveball. This build isn't very new, nor does it land on the extreme end of any one particular playstyle. Rather, I find it to be a highly applicable and very original, at least back when I created it, way to obtain a super effective healing build, mixed with being able to buff your teammates' damage by very significant amounts. And in all, it creates my favorite support build that I've ever ran in the Division 2. And the best part is, it works in both PvE and PvP content. So here's a look at what I've dubbed the Blood Doctor. It's got some complexity to it, but once you start to get the concept down, you can really see how basically every talent and piece works together in ways that are highly satisfying in gameplay. So we're going to go in a bit of a different order in how I break down the components to the build here, just so that you can better see the vision. Utilizing the Survivalist specialization, we get benefits like greater outgoing healing and shared armor kits, ideal for healing builds. But we also then get the Incendiary Grenade, which has a wide range but also applies fire. Using the lefty named ACS-12 with Perfect Sledgehammer, landing this grenade on an enemy applies a 40% armor debuff to them, which is the first major team damage buff. We are then also using the Acosta's Go Bag Exotic Backpack, which not only gives us passive bonuses like extra armor kits, healing, increases grenade capacity to 10, but its talent refunds thrown grenades once per minute. And it gives us Overcharge in PvE, massively boosting our healing output for a quarter of a minute every minute. But wait, there's still more. We are also using the ongoing directive gear set so that once we apply fire to enemies via the grenade, we can shoot them, ideally with our primary, which is using the Reformation talent to boost healing by 30%. Shooting the target applies a mark, and then when that marked target dies, the entire group gets half a magazine of hollow point ammo, further boosting damage by 20%. Survivalist also gives your teammates an extra 10% damage to status affected targets, so from the fire or the hollow point bleed, they'll be getting even more damage. And lastly, with Empathic Resolve on our chest piece, every time we apply a heal from either our Hive or Chem Launcher, teammates will get an additional 15% damage boost. So in combination, you've got fully powered healing skills that can overcharge, and a maximum ceiling of 85% increased team damage output. So yeah, it can take you a minute to figure out all of your buffs, but once you do, you realize just how crazy effective this all can be. And like I said, it works great across PvE and PvP. As far as the roles, just be sure you're at 6 skill tiers, and try to evenly distribute skill repair and skill haste roles across your attributes and mods. Alright, and then last but certainly not least, we come to my top PvP build recommendation for 2024. This build has remained reliable to me for a long time, and it is by far my favorite pick in solo or group Dark Zone gameplay, and I've been warming up to it more in Conflict as well, and that's surely only going to grow once they remove expertise from the experience next season. So here's the breakdown. For your primary, the Eagle Bear is not a requirement. However, if you do have one, I highly recommend trying it out, especially with its buff that is on the way in the aforementioned upcoming season. But if not, all good, use any good high-end AR or even the St. Elmo's. Going down the list of gear, we first got the Catharsis Exotic Mask. I adore this item. It is a fantastic way to help counter status effects and really all damage with its healing cloud capability. Also allows for great damage ramp up in those intense fights. One piece of Fenris on the chest, 10% AR damage there with Unbreakable. Using the Picaro's Holster named item for the dual core attributes, that works great. 2 pieces of Walker and Harris across the backpack and gloves. If you are speccing into a crit build like this, then that is more effective than using contractors. On the backpack then, we have the Companion Talent, which is really great for solo or team damage, more on that in a moment. And for the knee pads, the Fox's Prayers are always going to be a top pick for the multiplicative damage. For your skills, they are quite important. The one that I highly recommend is the Explosive Seeker Mine. It follows you around for its 2+ minute duration so that you can ensure the companion is active even when you're solo. Or if you need a good utility option in the middle of a fight, you can send it at an opponent at any time for a guaranteed stagger. And then I also love to run the Defender Drone. It has a much shorter duration, but it does stay by you for companion to be active, and it grants damage reduction. So popping this right before you go into a 1v1 is going to be clutch. And we've got Firewall as our specialization because that medkit is unbeatable for PvP. And yeah, not too much else to say. I've tried many PvP builds over the years, and none have rewarded me as much or been as reliable as this one. It's a bit of a jack of all trades. You might have to alter your playstyle a bit if you're used to using other things, but once you learn the basics, you'll be slaying in no time. And that is going to do it, my friends. Those are my top 5 loadout recommendations for the Division 2 in 2024. Again, not focused on just limiting to one role or playstyle, but rather offering builds that can cover the majority of endgame content and leave you well suited for both solo and group play. So I very much hope you all enjoyed and found this helpful. If you have any questions about what we covered, feel free to leave them down below and I will do my best to answer. And any ideas you might have for how you would go about modifying these or adding your own twists to them, share that as well. As always, this stuff is all constructive and iterative, so let's create that environment down below. That's going to do it for me today, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Ow.